Good evening. This is Blacklight on Sports with Charles Hallman, and I'm Dr. Mitchell Palmer McDonald. And tonight we are interviewing Lisa Lissimore. Lisa Lissimore is a former outstanding high school athlete, college athlete, and administrator for the Minnesota State High School League. Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you, Mitch. I appreciate that. Don't forget I was a coach too.
Oh yeah,
Coached at our alma mater,
yes, you did. I remember those days.
St. Paul Central.
St. Paul Central. Um, Want to start off about just talking a little bit about your background, what you've done, how you've come to do a lot of the things that you've done. Like you said, you were a coach. Um, you played on, first class AA basketball team to win the state, and you led the team back to state the next 2 years. Those type of things, and then you ended up um, coaching and working at for the Minnesota State High School League. Um, tell us your journey.
Well, it started at when my family moved from one side of Rondo to the other side of Rondo,
Okay.
and I had to transfer schools. So I went from, I started elementary school at Maxfield,
Mm-hmm.
and then I had the wonderful experience of busing and went to a school called Tilden, which is out by the Minnesota Fairgrounds.
Okay.
When my family moved, I then became a student at J.J. Hill, which was run by Shirley Kaiser,
Mm-hmm.
African American woman, and a great principal. And I started there in third grade, in the middle of the third grade, and it was there that I began to run into some of the most athletically gifted young women or girls,
Mm-hmm.
that were my team or classmates. And so, of course, my favorite class had to be recess, right? So we were out there playing kickball, climbing on the monkey bars and things like that, playing dodgeball, whatever it was. The sport of the day, we were all doing that. And then one of my classmates suggested or asked if I would like to join the football team. Like, football? What is football? And as she said, explained to me what it was. And I said,
Mm-hmm.
ooh, you need to come. Where do you play this at? And she said, Oxford Playground. And I said, well, you need to come home with me to tell my mother all of this because we were new to the neighborhood and I had no idea what Oxford was. And so she did that. And my mother agreed that I could play as long as I was home before it got dark. So that became my first experience with real organized sports was at Oxford Playground playing flag football, and we played other park and rec teams that had a girls program as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then when that season ended, we went inside and played basketball. And throughout all of this, I had met Weller Johnson, who, again, just the most athletically gifted athlete. And I mean, that I had ever run into. She could do everything. Not only did she play football with the girls, but she also quarterbacked the boys' team. She played on the boys' baseball team down at Oxford,
Mm-hmm.
and just did whatever it was she wanted to do. Most of us played on the girls' teams, but she
Okay.
was that good where she could make a choice or do both. So anyway, that was my introduction to sports was through my participation in the year-round sports program. And to bring all this into perspective, the year was 1970, so 2 years before Title IX. Oxford had a year-round program of sport for girls, and so we all found something that we liked to do there, and it was just seasonal. We just
Okay.
changed sports with each of the respective seasons. And then by the time I finished up elementary school, if you will, because remember it was K through sixth grade,
Mm-hmm.
and then seventh through ninth was
Yes.
junior high.
Yep.
By the time I went to junior high school, a lot of us that played on that team went to attended Ramsey Junior High
Okay.
School, and so again we were there playing together, and we had a pretty great team then. And most of us by that time had really sort of really was digging on basketball. I'd say that my love affair with the sport began there, well, at Oxford, and then it
Mm-hmm.
kind of matured a little bit more um, at Ramsey,
Mm-hmm.
and then definitely Central. And so that's how all of that, I was my introduction to sports, and then just taking advantage of every opportunity that was available. I did participate in things like the sporting programs that were offered through GAA, that was the Girls Athletic Association, I think, that most junior high school participated in. And they offered different sports like broom ball. Like I'd never played broom ball until I, one day after school, decided to participate in that offering. And then being on ice skates and things like that because they were speed skating, figure skating, those kinds of things. So I did do other sports, but the love of my life, and still is the love of my life, was basketball.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
And that's how we got started, Brother Charles.
No, I'm impressed, Lisa, because there's very few people that have success as a youngster
Mm-hmm.
and they stay in their community and you've been successful all the way through it into adulthood. You have done things that a lot of people have to go away
Mm-hmm.
and leave home, but you have always been at home, so to speak, in terms of everything you've done, coaching, whatever, you've done it at home. How proud are you, or have you ever reflected on that, that you was able, you, Linda, there was several others,
Mm-hmm.
have been able to do all you done and never left home, so to speak?
You know, I think that ingrained in all of us was this the let me go back and say it this way. We grew up in the Rondo community where the community members provided opportunities for us. Didn't matter if you were female, didn't matter if you were male, didn't matter if you were the greatest athlete or not. There were always opportunities. Even at Oxford Playground, yes, there was this huge gym and field and a huge field for football and baseball and softball, but there was also an art class. So if you weren't an athlete, but you were artsy or what have you, you could go in and do that. And so this community has provided so many opportunities to us that I almost feel that we have an obligation to give back in that way. And then you talk about the other opportunities. Linda goes on and goes to play for the University of Minnesota. I played 1 year at the University of Minnesota. And you're right, the only time that I've ever gone out of town has been to go to college for 3 years at Grandview University. And, had things worked out better with the University of Minnesota, I probably would have stayed there and played those additional 3 or 2 years, I guess it would have been. Or I could have gone there initially, but I wanted something a little different. I wanted to have the experience of going someplace else. But you're right. Everything led me back home because of how well we were taken care of, the degree of care that community provided for us. I mean, I think everyone would have wanted to return home and to contribute in any way that we can to continue to get folks and remind folks and stand to take advantage of the opportunities that are available and to be role models, to be quite honest with you. I mean, I think that's what we are within that community. I go to events. I went to a retirement party about 3 weeks ago. And the moment I stepped in the room, this tall sister whose face I knew, but I couldn't pinpoint where I knew her from, because sometimes it may be someone from the playground, because she was younger than me. Sometimes it's from the Minnesota State High School League where I've seen them, at a tournament or something. And then sometimes it's just they know me and I don't know them, right? But yet here she was. She praised me like I was a queen. And I was like, girl, sit down, and let's talk what you've been doing. And here she was, a former player at Central. And I don't know if I coached her, but I think Linda coached her. But then I knew her from the Shooting Stars girls basketball camp. So it's there are all those different things that have occurred, that I don't know. I love being home. I truly do. And I'm glad to be able to share my gifts and talents with my community in particular. And not just St. Paul community, but Minneapolis as well. I mean, I have a host of friends from Minneapolis. In fact, one of my best friends is Kathy Island Madison and Faith Johnson. And I love Tamara Moore and all of those young women. I mean, I really do hold them in very, very high esteem, because they too are doing the things that we all have wanted to do, and that is to give back in ways that are significant.
Is that a well kept secret, so to speak? The story of Rondo, the production of people that came out of there and became successful, and then also that so many black females that you mentioned have done successfully out of this community, which Luigi is only known for hockey.
Right. It's amazing because the more and more I dig into it, right? Because I've been involved in a couple of program or projects, excuse me, and I'm telling you, there is a generation of women older than me, and I was born in 1960 for the record, so y'all can do the math. No, I'm 63, and honestly, I'm learning more about them. Now, I used to see them a little bit, down at Oxford, because they were playing softball, and it's the Debbie Montgomery's group. And Debbie Montgomery would be in the gym, sometimes playing basketball with us, believe it or not. And I didn't realize that Debbie was, I think she must be like maybe, I don't know, 9, 10 years older than me, but I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know that at the time. I just thought it was, wow, here's a woman that really likes to play basketball and she's here playing with us. And, I'm coming down the court and I'm trying to figure out, okay, now what am I going to do? Am I going to take her to the hole or shall I pull up because she may knock me out or something, because she was more mature physically than I was. But obviously she knew she could play with us. And so she was there for a reason. But there are just, and her story all in itself, Debbie's, is pretty incredible as well, being playing baseball with the boys and being able to hit, so they say in the community, further than Dave Winfield. And she was a speed skater as well. And, unfortunately was locked out of the opportunity to compete, for in the Olympic trials because of her skin color,
Mm-hmm.
and so there's just something unique about Rondo, unique about some of the places that served people of color, and there were just opportunities that were available for all of us, and it's just pretty incredible that something that I and so many others would come from a place like that cared so much for us and wanted to see us excel, and began with providing opportunities for us. I was talking with Bill Peterson, who ran Oxford Playground, and Frank White, and they were telling me about these parties and things that they would give, so that they could raise monies to provide uniforms and provide transportation for all the kids. And I'm like, y'all did what? And so they did all those little things that, obviously we as kids didn't know, but they were doing so many things. Your father, Mitch, when Kwame came onto the scene, when he came back to Minnesota, man, it was incredible the things that we were able to do. There was a summer league that we could play in. We being, high school age
Mm-hmm.
basketball players could play in. And not only did we play here in St. Paul, but we were playing against Minneapolis teams.
Yeah.
We had a serious league. And again, we're talking in the 70s. Just now we're just years beyond Title IX. So I mean, these people were, when I say these people, the leaders in Rondo were visionaries, and they did all that they could to provide us with opportunities. And I think that those types of things have helped shape me and many others to be the women and the men that we truly are. When you talk to brothers that were involved, that are my age and a little bit younger, you will find that they feel the same way and have done the same things. Not as many in the community as maybe some of the women, but even when they do go away, they are still doing good wherever they are. And then if you call any of them and ask, hey, can you come back and do this? Stacy Robinson,
Mm-hmm.
um, of course they can. They'll help you achieve or do whatever it is you're looking to do, if it truly is serving the Rondo community. So it's been a blessing. I feel extremely blessed to have grown up in the Rondo community.
Mm. Now you mentioned the shooting stars
Oh, yeah,
thing. Now, how did that come about? I know you ran it for years. I think Crystal Flynn is taking it over,
absolutely.
but how did that come about, and what was that experience like?
Man, so, we were all gym rats. I mean, every girl that was playing basketball in St. Paul, they truly were gym rats. And so, again, you had Oxford Playground is where we hung out at. And not only did we attend Oxford to play basketball, but when the summer season came into play, we worked there. And so would spend most of the day, whatever whatever number of hours we were supposed to work, we did do that, but we were in the gym, fine tuning our game and that type of stuff as well. So then as we got older and we went back down to Oxford when we were in college, we're in college now, again, to hone our skills and, hang out, there were no girls in the gym. So that was, now we're talking about 1978, 79,
Mm-hmm.
even later. And, that was surprising to us because we're expecting to go into the gym, we're playing, we're going to see young girls playing, help them with their games, so on and so forth. And so when we asked the question, um, it was, you know, it was during that time when suddenly recreation centers weren't safe. For us, Oxford could have been a daycare center after, school was out.
Mm-hmm.
If your parents were still working till 5 and 6 o'clock, you could get out and it was a safe space for young people.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that was the rap on the rec centers, that they weren't safe spaces anymore for kids. And so we were challenged by that as well as challenged by the fact that there were no young girls playing basketball there. So we decided to recruit, Linda Roberts and I, Kathy Island, we decided we would recruit all of our basketball playing friends and see if we could put together a camp. And that camp, we had asked some young women, you know, why they weren't playing or why they weren't if they were attending camps, and they would say no, they were too expensive, or they were taking place at a time where I either had some household responsibilities or they needed to work, just like we needed to work.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we learned that, that became very easy for us to determine that this needs to be an evening clinic where it doesn't interfere with anything
Mm-hmm.
in terms of home responsibilities. It's affordable and it's at night where young girls, are free to, if they need to work, be in a position to work and to come participate. So we reached out to Park and Recs. We reached out to Central High School to try and find a spot. And once we did that, then we just went to work, and started, recruiting kids to come play, talking to parents and all those kinds of things to let them know that, hey, this is okay. This is what we're doing. This is how we're going to do it. So it ended up being an evening camp from like 6 to 8 for the younger group of kids. That
Mm-hmm.
is primarily your elementary age kids. And then for the um, junior high and high school, it was from 6 to 9. So it was over a 2 week period that we sponsored these camps. And we all just volunteered to do it. We weren't trying to get rich. The first, I think the cost for the young girls, the first year out, which I think it was 1989, was $10. And then for the older girls, it may have been 15. And we stayed at those prices. And I think right now, if you were to ask Crystal what the price of the camp is, I think it may be 25. So you're talking from 1989 up until
Mm-hmm.
now. And our goal was to make the experience one that was the equivalent to the experience they had somewhere else. The only difference is you're not staying overnight,
Okay.
at this camp, and it's a 2 to 3 hour camp. And we would bring in, so we had the best college players there, players from the University of Minnesota and
Mm-hmm.
other places coming to run the drills and those kinds of things. In addition to running them with us, we had the administration was more us, and meaning those of us that had graduated college by
Mm-hmm.
now. And it was, and then we would carve out time during that 2 hour or 3 hour period to bring in working professionals who worked in the fields of in the sporting industry, because we wanted to make them aware that not only can you play, but if you have this athletic background, you can actually create your own career with it. You can become a sports lawyer,
Mm-hmm.
a sports agent, a referee, coach, which they see that all the time. But what we did not see is a sports writer. And keep in mind, this is the 80s now. We didn't see all those folks, representing those professionals.
Yeah.
So we would bring folks in from the Timberwolves. We'd bring in players. Diana Taurasi was someone we brought in to have conversations with the girls and to run them through drills and those kinds of things. We brought in Chris Voles, who at that time was the athletic director for the
Mm-hmm.
University of Minnesota women's department. And then you had all of us working in sport as well. You had Kathy, you had Faith, who was coaching, Lisa, who was in administration, Linda, I believe, was still coaching at that time, I believe. And then we had the players,
Yeah.
that were there. So we tried to share information with them about, what to do with athletic opportunities. Did you know that you could get a scholarship to do this? I mean, all of that type of information, careers that were available, and bring them face to face with people who were in those careers, as well as teach them a little bit about basketball.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's cool. And like you said, Crystal Flint was one of our camp directors, and ultimately, as each one of us became a little older,
Mm-hmm.
and had other things, whether it be families or what have you, but decided to step away from it, we did put the camp in good hands, and those hands belong to Crystal Flint.
Mm-hmm.
And she's been doing a wonderful job with it, keeping it, still holding firm to our mission and our purpose. And so we're very pleased with all of that, and it has worked out really well.
Okay. Now, when gonna go back a little bit, I'm gonna see if you would tell this story.
Uh-oh.
Someone remind you of something.
Uh-oh.
A while back, you wrote a story in the high school newsletter
Mm-hmm.
about, I think something where you kind of thought things were going to be okay, so I think you missed a practice or something, and you had a big game.
Wee Mitch. Yeah, I got it.
Well, I think it's a good story for our listeners to know, to understand how that happened, because I remember that. I just remember that. I remember when my dad talked about it a little bit
Mm-hmm.
when it happened, but I was young, so I was like, oh, okay, well, whatever. But
Okay, Mitch. So I'm a junior at the wonderful St. Paul Central. And I had, so there's the first hour lunch, and I had first hour lunch, and then there's a second hour lunch, right?
mhm,
And during that second hour lunch period, I had a government class, and I didn't like the class, right?
mhm,
So I decided that I would go ditch school that day, ditch that class, excuse me, that's what I should say. And so Linda Roberts affirmed that I should do it, right? And so so we went to the gym, and we had a game that night, and we went to the gym, and we're in the gym shooting, and Linda was on the far end of the gym, and I was on the end of the gym where you could dash into the girls' locker room if you needed to, where the restrooms were.
yeah,
So so we're in there just shooting. Boom, boom. In comes Lou Cadavati, the coach. So someone had opened the door, so I saw him coming. So I hit my shot and I ran into the bathroom. So when he walks into the gym, he catches Linda because she's on the far end. There's nowhere to go. So he calls Linda down, get over here. And supposedly, um, I know what she did. He took her out in the hallway to talk to her with respect to why she wasn't in class either. And then she made the comment that, well, Lisa's in the bathroom. So the next thing I know, I hear Mr. Cadavati at the door. Lisa, Lisa, get out here. Get out here. So, I'm busted, right? I thought at the time that he just saw me dash in there, right? He did not. Linda told on me. She told on me. So we go up to his office, and he treats us just like any other kid who's ditching school. Called my mother and Linda's mother, and you guys know that Linda and I are cousins. So shared with them that we had been caught ditching class, and that there's a possibility we may not play tonight, right? So I'm like this. I'm kind of like sitting in the chair across the desk. I'm like, who cares, man? We're playing Johnson. We're gonna beat them without Linda or me, right? I'm like, I got cocky at the moment. I'm like, because you didn't have to call my mama right now. Golly, now I'm gonna get chewed out by her and everything else, right? So we get so he is like really upset with us. So we get to the game. So we're warming up and everything because he didn't say you're not playing yet. He told my parents you may not play. So next thing I know, I get the book. Here, Lisa. I'm like, oh, what's this? The book. You're gonna keep the book. I'm like, really? Right? So I've never kept a book before. So I'm still kind of got my little, you know, little edge on, right? I'm like, okay. So then I noticed Linda's name was in the book, but my name. So then the game kind of gets going, right? And I think at halftime it was pretty close. Still, I'm not worried because we have a team that's way better than their team, and we are obviously going to win this game. No, we lose. We lose the game. I can't remember how many points it was now off the top of my head. We lose the game. So we go back in the locker room after the game. Mr. Cadavades, Mr. K, we called him, is really upset. And so but he held firm to his principles that if you don't do right in the school day, you can't play. So we lose. He chews us out. And then the team turned on us too, and just talked about how disappointing they were that we didn't do the right thing as we should have been, so that we could play. And then I believe we would have been undefeated in the conference if we didn't have that loss. And so that was truly a lesson, for me, to do the things that are right. I mean, I had spent most of my life really trying to do those things. So let me go back for 1 second. So when I was in 8th grade at Ramsey, I was introduced to a magazine that had, I think it was like the Women's Sports Magazine is what it was called. And the librarian shared it with me. And in that book was a listing of all the different scholarships that female athletes could receive, the different sports. And then it had a roster of all the schools that gave out the most sports, or I'm sorry, the most scholarships. So at that particular point in time, 8th grade, I made a goal that that's how I'm going to go to college. I'm not going to have to burden my parents with tuition and all those things. I'm good enough and will be good enough by the time I get to the point where I graduate to get a college scholarship. So with that goal setting, obviously I was super protective of my eligibility because I understood that if you smoke, drink, or do anything, you would not be able to play. Your eligibility would be impacted by that. So that's kind of how I lived my life, to be quite honest. And what kept me out of when temptation approached, that's what very easily made me go the opposite direction. Okay. But that little government class, that was just one of those things. I am, what was I, 15 years old, 16, whatever, that wasn't the worst thing I could do, right? So anyway, I didn't tell y'all that the athletic director taught the class.
Oh my, that's even crazier.
But I just, I don't know, just lost it that day. But anyway, so it just really taught me a great lesson in doing the things that you're supposed to do, that you really can't get away with stuff, and I was so happy that Mr. K did the right thing by not letting us play, because I wonder what lesson I would have learned had he put me in when the game when I could have perhaps made a difference. When he saw that we were not, the score was not getting any better, they still should have won. That's all I got to say. They still should have won. But anyway, it's just one of those things where, it is one of the greatest lessons on self-discipline, doing the right thing, as I mentioned before, just all of that stuff. And so, it was, and then what makes it so bad is, like I said, we would have been undefeated. The newspaper ran the article the next day. And they said, we're not sure what the story was with Lissimore and Roberts, but they did not play because it was an upset. I mean, no one expected Johnson. They had Susie.
Yeah.
Sajevich. Yeah.
Yep.
But no one ever expected us to lose that game. Even I, sitting on the bench, never expected to lose that game. I mean, it was ridiculous.
Man.
Yeah. So that was oh man, that was the lesson. So you didn't have to worry about me doing anything else.
So you were straight after that, huh?
Oh, I was straight after that. And one of the other things that Mr. Cadavati said was, if you don't get 8 hours of rest, you will not play well. So that was my schedule, right, on a game night, night before a game. Now I'm in college and I have finals, and I have to stay up late to study.
Yeah.
So I'm ready the next day. I was freaked out, because I had a game after that evening. I played the best game ever. I'm like, well, that's not quite true, is it? 5 hours of work too.
Yeah. How was the transition from high school to college?
It was different. Like I said, I had an option to go to the University of Minnesota, an option to go to Grandview, and the university at the time, I had very limited knowledge about, the whole scholarship. Um, and like I said, I had this goal or the scholarship process, I should say, but I had this goal to get a scholarship to
Mm,
go to college. So when the university did not offer me a scholarship, I was quite offended, right?
mm,
And so I kept waiting and waiting and waiting. And yet, every other week, I'm reading about this player from Mabel, Minnesota, receiving a scholarship, this person from Bloomington, Minnesota, receiving a scholarship. And it's like, okay, where's my scholarship? Where's Christine Duran's scholarship?
oh wow,
Where are these scholarship offers for us? They definitely wanted us to come there. There was no question about that. So, I get a little offended, and I have this other coach that my fifth grade teacher, who I had met at J.J. Hill, her name was Rhoda Strout. She had
yeah,
gone to Grandview, and she was in cahoots with the coach. And this guy, every time something went wrong with the university, there he was. I've got a scholarship for you. Why don't you come down and check out the campus? We'd love to have you. And I could
mm,
almost guarantee that you'd probably start. And I guess he knew that I probably would based on the team that we had then. But anyway, so with that offer, I just decided, I had a timeline for the U to decide what they were going to do. And when that timeline came around and I didn't
mhm,
receive that offer, because again, it had to be a scholarship in my head, I took his offer. Here's the deal: the reason the U didn't offer a scholarship to me, let me speak about
mhm,
myself, is because I could qualify for so much financial aid. And this is what I meant by I had limited knowledge of
right,
how the financing of college occurs.
mhm,
Nowadays I would tell kids, hey, if you get a scholarship for your academic studies and you play basketball, that's cool too, because all that
mhm,
really matters is you're not paying the tuition. That
yes,
tuition is being paid by your family's not strapped with that, or you're not strapped with it.
yes,
But I didn't have that greater understanding of how to do that. And then the other thing that I did that was incorrect was dismiss my academics. I was a good student, and
mhm,
I could have applied for academic scholarships, but I was so set on an athletic scholarship that's if you didn't say that to me, I wasn't listening. I didn't hear you.
mhm,
So that was one of the biggest changes, I think. And then when I got to Grandview, quite honestly, the players were very different than what I was used to. I was used to extremely competitive players. Um, who took losses very hard, right?
mhm,
And I didn't sense that there. And it was challenging for me. I bet you quite a few people on that team didn't really like me because I was competitive in practice and everything else. And I would be upset when we lost because I was not used to losing, Charles. I just wasn't. I mean, I wasn't. Maybe three a season or something like that. And then it was to Highland, and then we'd have an opportunity to get them back,
yeah,
that kind of stuff. But I mean, I would be visibly upset, and no one else was as visibly upset as me. So
mhm,
it just didn't feel like the right mesh with the athletes too. Now I'm not saying that about every single one of them, but I'm just saying there were a few that I just we just didn't have a really, really, really good vibe when it came to competitive play. And then from a social standpoint, we go to college, and I had dreams of pledging. There was no sorority on campus.
mhm,
I'm thinking I'm going to be, like meeting all these fantastic people and going different places. That didn't happen. So from a social standpoint, I wasn't
mhm,
very happy. And that both of those, equally drove me to consider returning or going to the University of Minnesota. I would be home,
mhm,
and I thought, let's just try it. I'd be away from there. And as it turns out, it ended up being the better place for me. And let me just say that when I did return after spending that 1 year with the university,
mhm,
and that didn't go as well as I would have liked. I think I had what I thought was a good half a season with them. I didn't go on campus thinking that I was going to bust into their lineups or anything like that. I knew I would have to work my way through things, and this is another thing that young people don't realize is that sometimes you do have to wait your turn, right?
mhm,
And I didn't understand that,
yeah,
because I thought I'm as good as any guard on that team, you know. And the one thing that I loved most about my game was defense. I should say about my game and about the game as a whole. I love defense more than scoring, honestly. I love that. And you know, I thought I'm going to impress them with that, number one. I'm a good passer, you know, I'm going to be able to do that. I'm a good playmaker. That's going to be impressive. You know, I don't have to score all the
Mm-hmm.
time, you know. Um, but you know, as time went on, you know, other people, you know, came into their game as well. You know, Debbie Hunter was a great recruit for the University of Minnesota.
Mm-hmm.
And by January, she came into her own right. And we kind of had similar games, but she had a better outside shot than me. And she was equally as good a defensive player. And so, you know, she came on and I kind of became now, you know, the third guard that went into the game. And
Mm-hmm.
then things continued to change, and I thought, oh, I don't like this because I've never been in this situation where I'm not a key player. Okay, I
Mm-hmm.
don't have to be a starter, I don't think, but that was the only time I've never started. But so I don't know. But anyway, I've always said that when I talk about my experience at the university, I always put it this way, and that is that they just didn't appreciate my skills as much as I would have liked for them to, as much as
Mm-hmm.
I would have liked. It was a great experience to have. But when I went back to Grandview, I was able to play immediately because the transfer rule allowed you to continue to play. And the team was entirely different. And they were more players, like the players I was used to playing with
Mm-hmm.
here at Minnesota, even at the high school level. I'm talking, they were competitive. I mean, we were so competitive that after practice, we're playing pickup games and those kinds of things. I mean, and we had a great team, you know, and was number four nationally in our division. What that division was, I don't know. We were part of the AIAW, but it was just fun. You know, from the practice to the games and even back at the dorms, just everything changed on campus where I was having a really good time. And then my senior year, it changed just a little bit more, but I was mature, and that maturity helped a bit. And I knew I only had one more year to do that year to do.
Mm-hmm.
I was comfortable where I was. The team was still dynamic though. Yeah, it was very competitive.
That's good.
Yeah.
Now I want to make sure we get into this a little bit. You time moves on, you graduate, and then you end up working for the Minnesota State High School League.
Hmm.
What was that? What was that experience like as you look back? I mean, you were there. How long were you there?
34 years.
34 years. So
Hmm.
you've seen a lot, huh?
I've seen a lot. It was interesting because I think your father,
Yeah.
and again, a lot of the community leaders, Rondo community leaders, were have always been in our corners, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so there was an opening on the league's board of directors. And at the time of that opening, I was actually working for the legislature. So when I got out of college, I coached at Central
Mm-hmm.
for a year, and then I worked full time at the legislature in their public information office. And I worked there for 6 years, and this guy worked with me, not in the same office, but he worked for the legislature as well. He moved on to work for I think it was um, it was an some educational board that had the appointing rights to the Minnesota State High School League's board of directors. And he and I had met each other when we worked at the legislature, and in addition to that, we had played on a co-ed softball team for the legislature. And he comes into the office and he uh, says to me, Lisa, the organization I work for, I want to say it's the Minnesota State Education Board, something like that. And he said, we have we need to find someone to serve on the high school league's board of directors. And when I learned of this, I thought of no one but you. I'm like, the Minnesota State High School League board of directors. What? He said, yeah, and he began to describe it a little bit. And then I called your daddy. And I said, Kwame, man, what do you know about this organization? And blah, 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 blah. And so he began to tell me some things. And Mr. Robinson, same thing, you know. And so I went upstairs to the Legislative Reference Library to go get some information to look at who the high school league is and what they actually do, because all I remember is they sponsored the tournament that I played in, and then my medals and certificate had that name on it. That's all I knew. So then I began to read a little bit about them on the file that they had upstairs, and then began to talk to people, Mr. McMore and others who were working in the athletic space at the high school level and who had, you know, interactions with the organization. And then I called up Laureline Baker Kent, who had also served on this board as well, and the other gentleman who had served as well, just to find out, okay, what is this all about? What do you do? What's the commitment? All those kinds of things. And so, sort of reluctantly, I did it because I was voluntold that I had to do it by our community leaders, to be quite honest. And then during the time that I was there, you know, there was a change in their staffing. And the executive director retired. The then executive director retired, and then they moved Dave Stead in as the interim executive director. And then they decided that they were going to um, move Dave to the executive director permanently, and then then they had an associate director's position that was open. Well, the high school league had been criticized during this time for not having diversity on their staff. And so once again, our community, you know, began looking at people who should be applying for this job. I applied for it. Jim Robinson had applied for it, and I think there might have been another candidate of color that had applied for the position as well. I know that Jim and I were both finalists for the job, and I'll be honest with you, I thought I blew the interview on the second round of interviews. The first round of interview was pretty easy because it was with the staff, and I knew the staff from my work on the board. And then the second one was with, you know, some of the board members and Dave, and the questions became very challenging for me because I had not worked in the space. I didn't know all the issues between public and private schools. And so I was just pretty honest in that interview to say, you know, I just don't have enough history to even provide you with an answer to that. And I just shared what I had heard, right? But it wasn't anything very profound or anything like that. And there were a couple of questions like that where I just didn't have the experience to answer them. And I think that I thought took me out of the running, to be quite honest, when you can't answer a question. But I didn't want to make up something,
Right.
you know, and
Right.
you know, pretend like I did know. So I think that in the long run, my honesty was something that they did value during that period. And what was interesting is we had all the interviews. I thought I was out, honestly. So now we're back in a board meeting in June where they're going to announce who the director is. So I'm raising my hand to excuse myself, and they wouldn't acknowledge me, right? I mean, I'm thinking they forgot, right? Like we should probably have Lisa leave the room, right? Because you know, and they just kind of ignored it. And then as they, you know, began to make the announcement, they said that we're going to offer the position to you, Lisa, if you would like it.
So that's how you found out.
And that's how I found out, you know, in that meeting. But I was ready to excuse myself from the
Right.
meeting because I thought I should have been excused, you
Right.
know, just in case I took it hard or, you know, whatever. But that's how that happened. I'll tell you what, during that year that I was on that board, because they were going through some real challenging times, and you all kind of remember it when there were allegations of mismanagement of money and double dipping and things like that. And Ernie Carlson was running for governor, and
Yep.
and he was a state auditor at the
Yep.
time, and so there was just a lot of scrutiny with respect to the organization. So much that I didn't think I wanted to work there, you know, because of it was just challenging. And so I forgot, I lost my train of thought there, but I learned more than I probably ever would have learned because we had more meetings because you were only supposed to have 6 meetings a year. But they had so many meetings that I couldn't even attend the meetings because each time I went to a meeting, I had to take vacation time, right?
Oh,
Because
okay.
you know, I had a full-time job. And so because they had to be so transparent about the organization and how it functioned, I learned more in that 1 year than, I mean, it was good for me to learn all of that. You know, sadly, the organization had to go through all of that, but so it helped me to really process and understand, you know, the operations of the organization. So it was a wonderful experience. I think I sum it up to being what I would call a milestone hire, because it brought diversity
Mm-hmm.
to the organization, not only from with respect to being, I was not only, I was the first person of color to ever work there,
Mm-hmm.
and only the second woman to be on their executive team. So when I talk about diversity, I'm talking about diversity as a whole.
Mm-hmm.
And I can remember telling your father that um, I didn't want to apply for the job. One of my reasons, I said, because I didn't want to feel like their token, right? And plus I was enjoying what I was doing. I was coaching at the University of St. Thomas at this point in time,
Mm-hmm.
and working for the legislature. And the legislature is an exciting place to work, right? I mean, it's cool. I'm doing what I love to do. I'm writing, you know, I'm in the middle of things. I'm at committee hearings where bills are first heard, and so I know what's coming, and then I'm coaching and having a great time. So I wasn't ready to leave to go anywhere. I was really enjoying my work. And Kwame said, Lisa, I'll never forget this, and I still kind of operate this way. He said, sometimes we have to walk through the door that opens, right?
Mm-hmm.
And what really matters is what you do when you get inside. And so I think that throughout my entire career there, I have really tried to engage people of color and women, engage them in some of the programming, employment opportunities that did come available. Leah B. Olson worked there.
Mm-hmm.
And it was, quite honestly, my going out and recruiting her, you know, to come and work with us. I tried to get Crystal to come and work with our officials program, and those types of things. And then I think the greatest impact that I was able to have in that whole engagement process, because is to get people involved on committees, the possibility of being a board member, and also to work our state tournaments. That's where I think I had the greatest impact, was in those three areas. On the employment side, what people don't understand about high school associations, their staffs are very small. I mean, our staff, when I joined, was 18.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think it reached up to 22 at one particular point in time. And then now I think it might be back down to about 18. But most state association staffs are even smaller than that. We were considered one of the larger state associations in terms of our staffing. But they're very small. And the other thing is, and I'm an example of that, is there's very little turnover. When the turnover occurs, it's because someone's retiring, because it's a
Mm-hmm.
great place to work. You're like, I tell people, I've been playing games all my life now, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because you know, I played games as a kid in high school, college, and even felt like I was doing that at work, because it never felt like work. It was truly a labor of love to be there. And it was, I mean, here I have the front seat to watch the best athletes to ever come out of our state, and to sometimes do it sitting next to the two of you as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to tell y'all that, you know, when we would at the basketball tournaments, man, when y'all would come, I felt so good. I felt surrounded by community. And when the Minneapolis teams and the St. Paul teams begin to be regulars at those tournaments, as we increase classes and all of that, it really felt like community. And I can't tell you how much I've appreciated y'all for being there and making me laugh, especially during those times when it could have been very stressful. Because there were times when it was stressful,
Mm-hmm.
because the minute something happens, it becomes it becomes pretty stressful to be in those environments. But the one time that really made me smile from ear to ear was when you and your dad came down to the softball tournament. I shouldn't say way down, but in Mankato, man. And it was like, because that rarely happened, right? Because there were so few teams of color
Yeah.
that will participate there. So oftentimes I didn't see a lot of people of color in that space down there.
Yeah.
But it was so fun to see y'all come there, and I didn't know you were coming.
Yeah.
So it was great.
We didn't, my, Johnson had made it
Hmm.
to and then, we were looking to get credentials. And,
Yeah.
I'm like, we ain't never did softball before. So then Dad's looking in and seeing who, okay, let's see who's running the tournament. Like he
Hmm.
didn't know.
Hmm. Hmm.
And then he said, "You got to be kidding me. We saw your name." And he said, "You got to be kidding me," like that.
Hey,
And then he said, "We're gonna." He said, I'm not even gonna let her know
yeah.
we're gonna surprise her because she'll never even dream that we would come to like a softball
And here goes
state
Kwame with
tournament."
his dashiki on and everything. I'm looking, I'm like, that's none other than Kwame, unless there's a Kwame 2 in Mankato,
Yeah,
man, which there could be.
we
Yeah,
came. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
we came there because I said I was going just because it was John. And he said,
Right.
"Man," he said, "I should go with you." But
Yeah.
then when he found out you were running the tournament,
Tournament. Yeah.
he said, "Oh yeah, I'm going. I gotta go, but we're not going to tell her we're coming."
Oh man, that was one. And then
That's interesting.
I've done a lot of things. I mean, I experienced a lot of things working for the organization. Obviously my favorite was, basketball. I love softball. That was the tournament I loved managing next. And but man, I've done cross country running.
Yeah.
That tournament was another fun one. But the funnest, I laugh at myself all the time, man. I did skiing, right?
Okay. Yeah.
I had never been on a pair of skis, and it was so fun. But I have to give credit to all of the folks that worked with me,
Hmm.
and around me, because if it weren't for them, the experience would never have been as great for me personally when it comes time for sports like swimming and diving. The first swim meet I'd ever gone to was the first one that I ran, right?
Hmm.
And for the high school league. I love watching swimming, during the Olympics and those kinds of things, but to manage one of those and to put all the pieces together, same thing with the ski tournament. It's like, okay, so how high is this hill and what are we doing and what happens when they get way over there? People I think really appreciated me in that I did not act like a know-it-all. There was no way I could walk into those spaces and
Hmm.
act like I knew everything.
Hmm.
We hired people to do certain things,
Hmm.
and I let them do their work. I was interested in what that work was, and had many conversations with them about what their role was with the tournament, how the sport was supposed to function, and all those different things. Because there were people that were doing this work,
Hmm.
and I walk in, and like I said, I'd never been to a swim meet, I'd never been to a skiing competition.
Hmm.
Everything was new to me except for basketball and softball. Because those were two sports that I did play at some point in my life, but all the other stuff, I remember the cross country coach at Central trying to get me to run. I said, "Run cross country? I don't think so." But the people that worked with me, to help provide a quality experience for those kids, and then again, to see folks, the community folks coming into the arenas,
Hmm.
made it really, really a wonderful experience, for me personally when that happened, because so often I could be in a space where it was just only me,
Hmm.
like skiing, I'm traveling up to the Iron Range, and it's just me, so um like I said, great people surrounding me, but it was still just me,
Right.
you know. So but no, it was a dream job that I really never dreamed of, to be quite honest, because again, people don't know that these opportunities exist. I didn't.
Hmm.
I think when we grow when you're in sports and when you're in now it might be a little different, but back during my time, you saw referees, you saw coaches, and that's what you thought you could do,
Hmm.
if you were going to explore a career in sports. But now, when I speak to young people about sporting careers, I just say put the word sport in front of everything, and you can do that. Put the
Hmm.
word sport in front of sports law. You can do it all. You don't. There's more to just being a coach, more to just being a referee, and those are great professions too. Don't get me wrong, but there are front offices for professional sports teams.
Yeah.
There are universities, which again, I never thought about that either, that
Mm.
there's a whole athletic department because I wasn't exposed to it. And that again was what we were trying to do with the Shooting Stars girls basketball camp, was to use that platform to introduce young people to the opportunities that are there and to
Okay.
put real people in front of them that are doing the work.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay.
So it was a great opportunity. And Mitch, Kwame served on committees with me. We would
Hmm.
bring y'all into the Hall of Fame and
Yeah.
all those
Yeah.
kinds of things.
Yeah.
And the good thing about all of this, having this community support in that way, is I could lean in on all of y'all. And even if it wasn't a good situation, I could call Charles and say, "Man, what's the word out
Mm.
here? Because I need to bring this into this office so that these people understand the impact of whatever it was that happened,
Mm.
because I'm out there, but I'm not out there, right?
Yeah.
But if I hear it, if I can lean in on you or Charles, or when at the time when Mr. McMorr was living, Brett McNeil, Tony Fisher, all these individuals that are now involved in sports, that allowed me a better opportunity for sharing with folks, and using the opportunity to educate folks about our community and how these things impact our community.
Mm.
So I appreciate y'all
Well, thank
being
you.
there all the time, so,
Thank you.
and telling our stories, and that's what I really valued, because as you all know, there were there's a ton of media folks that are at our events, but
Mm.
no one tells a story about our kids like you all did. And so I really, really did appreciate the stories written about Jim Robinson and
Mhm.
all the work that he did. Yes, we saw him at the tournament doing his thing. Yes, those of us at the high school league saw him come to that office and help us select referees. But what a lot of people didn't know is Jim was out recruiting and scouting officials all
Yeah.
over the state so that we could provide opportunities. And he would drive up to the Red Lake, Indian
Yes.
reservation to
Yes.
watch games if there were enough complaints about the officiating, to ensure that, okay, we're going to do better than this, and to find officials from up in that area that could come and work our tournament. So he was a very valued member of our team, and a valued member to me, because there were days when I needed him, just to sit and vent about maybe something
Mhm.
that happened. And he could, and what was so interesting is he would sit in my chair like this, and he would just listen, and he might do this or something like that, and he would just let me vent, right? And then he would always have a calming word for me, and he would be able to pull things back into perspective for me. And I really did appreciate that. And sometimes those conversations happen 6 o'clock at night, because he may have been in the building meeting with someone else, not Lisa.
Right.
And his meeting may have ended at 4, but he comes into my office and we begin to chat, and it's 6 o'clock, and then we might go have some dinner at that particular point in time because it's dinner time. But he was a very valued mentor, and I would honestly say sponsor to
Mhm.
me, no matter what was going on. Even if it didn't involve basketball, if he read something in the newspaper about swimming, he may call me and say, "You okay? I read this or read that." So everyone needs that. And so you talk about Rondo, that's Rondo. And that's an example of how these folks never let us go, and why we feel so committed to doing whatever it is they asked us to do. I mean, really, they really have.
I see you as a trailblazer.
Mm.
Do you see yourself as one?
I don't see myself as a trailblazer, Charles. I really don't. I sometimes when you put only in terms of when I think of the number of years that I've been at it, okay, and then when you start looking at, for example, in the high school space, the number of Black women, the few number of Black women that have been doing this work, then I look at it as a trailblazer. Um, but I have met I've been so fortunate to meet some of the most wonderful people who Black men and women who work in this space. I mean, we were truly a family. And one of the things that I miss, um, the one thing I miss is being around those folks when we would attend our national conference. That conference starts probably this week. And that's what I miss because that was my time to, foster that sisterhood with, I mean, anyone new. It's just like anything. When we see a new sister, we're all like, who's that? Who's that? Or a new brother, who's that? Who's that? I mean, I had a list of African American people from each of the association. So when there was someone that new came into our mix, boy, we would embrace them and we would, invite them into our circle and, take time, have events where, dinner and stuff like that, or sitting by the pool where we got to know who they were. And they too became people we could lean on when times became hard at the state associations because there are hard times. And sometimes those hard times can be with your peers too, you know. So they were always great folks that you could lean on. And one of the things during my time, I had the opportunity to see, I think it was 6 African American people lead a state association. And the first came in 1994. 1994. Now, the high school league has been around since 1960, so I assume 1916, excuse me, and I believe all the others probably were started in and around that time as well. And it wasn't until 1994 that Lewis Stout became the executive director of the Kentucky High School Association. And then after that, we had Rhonda Blanchard Green. She became the first African American woman to run a state association. She was with the Colorado High School Association. She's younger than I am. A bad sister that ran track for Nebraska, ran and was at Nebraska when Von Shepard was there. They know one another really well. Yeah, they were at the same time. And then she stepped away after COVID. Her husband passed away and just a lot of personal things. And so she stepped away from the job. And then there is my girl, Q Tucker. Now, you know that's a basketball name, don't you? Q became the other African American woman to run the North Carolina High School Association, and Q is something else. Q used to coach at North, North Carolina State, I think. She was a basketball coach, but she is so great. She is wonderful. And then there was a sister, oh, Lisa, don't do this, don't do this. She became the director of the Delaware High School Association. And then there's a brother at South Carolina, a brother at Oklahoma, and a brother at Alabama right now, I believe. But all of us, many of us were just associate directors, the associate or assistant directors, and associate and assistants are the same, different state associations call them different things, but we were all on staff there. So it was very typical that the administrative, the leadership staff consisted of a woman, and she could be black or white, and they would have a male um, director, and there were very few states that had more than more than 2 individuals of color. Colorado did, but because Rhonda was a director, she had an associate director that was African American, and then she had a brother that ran their arts programs, and so they had 3. And you might find Kentucky may have had 1 or more, and I'm just talking about the leadership team, not the support teams. But yeah, it was very unusual to find an association with more than 2 people of color on their executive staffs, and even more than 2 women on their executive staffs. So we've come a long way, still have a ways to go with respect to that, but you also have to remember that our staffs are small and people don't leave until they retire. And so you have a lot of people that stay there 20 years, 34 years in the case of me. Dorothy McIntyre, who you all are familiar with, first female to work for the state association, is 32 years. Dave Stead was 30-something years. They're great jobs. You have a great time. It's a great place to work in sports because unlike the college scene, you don't have events every night or 3 times a week. You know exactly when you're going to be working and when
Mm-hmm.
those winter season, those tournament seasons are held.
Mm-hmm.
And so that makes a huge difference on your work life, your balance, bringing some balance into your life, with regards to work and your personal life. Unlike, I thought maybe I would go into college administration.
Mm-hmm.
Once I was about 7 years after working for the high school league, I began to look to see where people go, right? When they work there, they didn't go anywhere. They didn't. That's what I discovered. And then, I had members of the village, if you will, suggesting that I should consider things at the University of Minnesota when they were open. And I'm like, I don't think so because they work too much at night, and and the pay was, wasn't that great for me to just leave the high school league. I mean, I think the high school league was paying more. So it wasn't,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have any other incentive, is what I should have said, to actually leave the high school league. I didn't. I had people from the Timberwolves, approach me about jobs and things like that, but none of them felt better than where I was at. And so I stayed where I was at. So, and I think it was a good move to stay there. Yeah.
Now, as we kind of wrap things up, we usually use this time to give the guests a chance to say something that maybe we didn't talk about, some maybe words of wisdom you want to give to anyone. You don't have to have anything to say. We
I,
can we
I
can always end it right here.
I feel, brother, like I have said a lot
Mm-hmm.
already. I would just, strongly encourage people to, take advantage of the different opportunities that are there in the world of sports because there are so many different things that you can do. And we didn't even talk about, entrepreneurship, in that space. But there is that as well. And like I said, just put the word sports in front of any particular industry and there you will find some type of job. um so that just take advantage of it because even as young people, we learn so much more than the X's and O's, right? and
Mm-hmm.
and and that's what I'm most proud of, is that I learned so many other lessons, how to deal with failure, how to goal set, because that eighth grade goal was the first time that I really set a goal and really put in place a process for achieving it. We all say we're goal setters, right? But do we really have the process down for achieving that goal? As we get older, I think we learn that, right? But I'm in eighth grade. I'm 14 years old or 13, whatever that is, and I'm setting a goal and I really can see a pathway, so that's the type of learning that truly takes place in sport. And that's what I like to see people get from sports. I mean, it's one thing to be an all-star and yeah, we like all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're not playing the game not to be that, right? I mean, if certainly if you have the skill sets to be that, but I'm also hoping that along with that, they are learning those life lessons that they can use forever. And that's the way it is, so that's kind of my wrap up, if you would,
Okay.
Mitch and Charles. And I thank you all for having me here. I
Well,
appreciate it. This opportunity is great. He was quiet. I'm wondering why, but you and I have talked this way, whenever we'd see each other, sometimes sitting at those tournaments, while we're waiting for another game to start, the storytelling and all those kinds of things. So I do appreciate this opportunity and very, very supportive of the Minnesota Spokesman-Recorder. You guys have been very good, not only just to me, but to our community as a whole. 90 years, man, that's a long, long time. So we're appreciative of this organization and its legacy.
I want to thank you for coming, and it was very good having you on. Very good talking with you. This is Blacklight on Sports. I'm Dr. Mitchell Palmer McDonald, and
I'm Charles Hallman, and thank you for joining us, and come back again.